The doorbell rang at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in November. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the clock on my kitchen wall, watching the second hand tick forward while I nursed my third cup of Earl Grey tea. When you live alone in a modest two-bedroom apartment in North Vancouver, you notice these small details. You have to, or the silence becomes too loud. I set down my cup and walked to the door, my slippers shuffling against the worn hardwood floors. Through the peephole, I saw him. Trevor, my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died when he was 8, the man who hadn't called me in 22 months. Not on my birthday, not on Christmas, not even when I'd left him 3 voicemails saying I missed him. I opened the door slowly. He stood there with that familiar crooked smile, the one that used to melt my heart when he was 5 and had broken my neighbor's window with a hockey puck. Next to him stood a woman I'd never met, tall, blonde, impeccably dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mum," Trevor said, stepping forward to hug me. I let him. Old habits die hard. "It's so good to see you. This is Vanessa, my fiancé." He was getting married and I was finding out on my doorstep. "Come in," I said, "because what else do you say? I'll put the kettle on." As they settled onto my threadbare sofa, the one I'd bought secondhand 15 years ago, I noticed Vanessa's eyes scanning the apartment, taking inventory, the faded curtains, the television from 2008, the refrigerator that hummed too loudly because the motor was dying. I'd lived in this apartment for 12 years, ever since I'd retired from my job as a bookkeeper at a small accounting firm in Burnaby. My pension was modest. I clipped coupons. I bought day-old bread. I'd learned to make one chicken last 5 meals. But 3 months ago, everything had changed. I'd stopped at the Shoppers Drug Mart on Lonsdale Avenue, the one I always went to because they gave seniors discounts on Tuesdays. On a whim, something I never did, I bought a lottery ticket. Just one. The Lotto Max jackpot was $57 million, and I remember thinking how ridiculous it was that I was spending $3 on a dream when I needed that money for groceries. A week later, I checked my numbers while eating toast for dinner. I'd won. Not the full jackpot. I had to share it with 2 other winners, but my portion was $19.3 million. After taxes, I walked away with just over $13 million. $13 million. I'd sat on my kitchen floor and cried for 2 hours. Then I'd called the lottery office, arranged everything quietly, and made a decision that would change my life. I told no one. Not my sister Patricia in Halifax, not my neighbor Mrs. Chen, who'd brought me soup when I had the flu, and certainly not Trevor, who hadn't bothered to check if I was alive in nearly 2 years. I kept working at the food bank where I volunteered twice a week. I kept wearing my same winter coat with the broken zipper I'd been meaning to fix. I kept living in this apartment with the leaky tap in the bathroom that the landlord refused to repair. But I'd done 3 things differently. First, I'd hired a wealth management firm in downtown Vancouver, a discreet one that catered to people who wanted privacy. They'd invested my money wisely. They'd set up trusts. They'd made sure I'd never worry about money again. Second, I'd bought myself one luxury. A silver locket that I wore every day, tucked under my blouse where no one could see it. Inside was a tiny photograph of myself on the day I'd claimed my winnings, standing in front of the lottery office, grinning like a fool. It was my secret, my reminder that I'd survived everything life had thrown at me, and I'd won. Third, I'd made a promise to myself. I would see who really loved me for me, not for what I could give them. I would wait and watch. And now, 22 months after Trevor had last called me, here he was, with a fiancé I'd never heard of, sitting on my sofa, accepting the tea I'd poured into my mismatched mugs. "Mom, you look wonderful," Trevor said. He didn't mean it. I could see it in his eyes. He was wondering why I looked the same, why I was still in this apartment, why I hadn't moved somewhere nicer. "Thank you, dear. You look well, too." He did. His hair was professionally cut, his watch was expensive, his shoes were Italian leather. "We wanted to visit earlier," Vanessa said smoothly, placing her hand on Trevor's knee, "but we've been so busy with the wedding planning. It's going to be at the Fairmont in Whistler. 300 guests. 300 guests, and I wasn't sure I'd been invited until this moment. That sounds lovely, I said. Actually, Mom, that's part of why we're here. Trevor leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. The wedding is in 6 months, and we're a bit over budget. I was wondering if you might be able to help out. Just a small contribution. Maybe $5,000? There it was. The real reason for the visit. I took a sip of my tea. It had gone cold. That's a lot of money, Trevor. I know, and I wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. But you know how weddings are. Everything costs so much more than you expect. He smiled that crooked smile again. And I'm your only son. I know you've always wanted to see me settled and happy. What I'd always wanted was for him to call me, to ask how I was doing, to remember that I existed. Let me think about it, I said quietly. Vanessa's expression tightened just slightly. She hadn't expected resistance. Of course, Trevor said, standing up. Actually, Mum, could I use your washroom? Long drive from Kelowna. You drove all the way from Kelowna just to ask me for money? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Trevor's smile faltered. We wanted to see you too, obviously. I've missed you. He walked down the hallway to the bathroom, leaving me alone with Vanessa. She pulled out her phone immediately, scrolling through something, not bothering to make conversation. I gathered the tea mugs and took them to the kitchen, washing them slowly in the sink. That's when I heard it. The bathroom door hadn't closed properly. It never did. The latch was broken and I'd learned to pull it shut firmly, but Trevor wouldn't have known that. And my apartment was small, with thin walls, and sound carried. I heard his voice clearly. He was on the phone. Yeah, I'm here now, he said quietly. It's worse than I thought. This place is a dump. She's clearly struggling. I froze, my hands in the soapy water. No, I don't think she has any savings. Did you see that sofa? It's probably from the 90s. I'm telling you, we're going to have to support her eventually. Might as well get something out of her now before she's completely broke. My chest tightened. I'll ask for $5,000, but I bet we can get more. I'll tell her about the honeymoon cost too. Play up the whole "your only son" angle. She's soft. She'll cave. There was a pause. What about after the wedding? Honestly, I'm thinking we might need to have a serious conversation with her about her living situation. This apartment probably costs, what, $1,200 a month? She could move somewhere cheaper, split a place with another senior or something. Then if she had a bit of money left over, we could borrow it for the down payment on our house. I stood there, water dripping from my hands onto the floor. Vanessa already looked up some subsidized senior housing. There's a place in Surrey that's only $600 a month. Sure, it's far, but it's not like she goes anywhere. We could visit her on holidays. Another pause. I know, but think about it this way. She's 68. How much longer is she really going to need that money? And we're young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. We need to buy a house, start a family. Her generation doesn't understand how expensive everything is now. I heard him laugh. Actually laugh. Yeah, you're right. I'll turn on the charm. She hasn't seen me in almost 2 years. She's probably desperate for attention. I'll tell her I'm sorry, that I've been busy, that I want to be closer. She'll eat it up. The bathroom door opened. I heard his footsteps coming back down the hallway. I quickly dried my hands and walked back to the living room, my face carefully neutral. Feel better? I asked. Much better, thanks. He sat back down next to Vanessa, draping his arm around her shoulders. So, Mum, I wanted to apologize. I know I haven't been around as much as I should have been. Work has been crazy, and with the move to Kelowna, everything's been chaotic. But I want to change that. I want us to be closer. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. I saw his father's eyes, but none of his father's kindness. I saw the baby I'd rocked to sleep every night for 2 years when he had colic. I saw the teenager I'd worked double shifts to buy hockey equipment for. I saw the young man I'd helped through university, even though it had meant I couldn't retire when I'd planned. And I saw a stranger who thought I was weak, who thought I was desperate, who thought I was someone to be used. Trevor, I said softly, I need to tell you something. He leaned forward eagerly. What is it, Mum? I can't give you $5,000 for your wedding. His face fell. But Mum, I can't give it to you because I won't give it to you. I kept my voice steady. I heard your phone conversation. All of it. The color drained from his face. Vanessa's eyes widened. I heard you call my home a dump. I heard you plan to manipulate me. I heard you discuss moving me to subsidized housing in Surrey so you could take whatever money you think I have. Mum, I can explain. Please don't. I stood up. I think it's time for you to leave. You were eavesdropping? Vanessa stood too, her voice sharp with indignation. In my own home? No. Your fiancé simply didn't close the bathroom door properly because the latch is broken. Something I would have told him if he'd visited me any time in the past 22 months. Trevor's mouth opened and closed. I didn't mean those things. I was just venting to a friend. I was stressed about money. Stop. I held up my hand. Every word you said, you meant. And now I know exactly who you are. Not the son I raised, not the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them flowers. You're someone I don't recognize. This is ridiculous, Vanessa snapped. We drove 4 hours to see you. You drove 4 hours to ask me for money. There's a difference. I walked to the door and opened it. I'd like you to leave now. Trevor stood there, his face cycling through emotions. Shock, anger. Then, finally, a calculated sadness. Mum, please, can't we talk about this? We just did. I kept the door open. Goodbye, Trevor. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he gave up pretending. His expression went cold. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you're old and alone and need help. Don't expect me to take care of you. I won't, I said quietly. I never will again. They left. Vanessa stomped out first, her heels clicking sharply on the hallway floor. Trevor paused at the threshold. You'll regret this, he said. No, I replied. I really don't think I will. I closed the door behind them and locked it. Then I walked to my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed, and cried. Not because I'd lost my son. I'd lost him a long time ago. I'd just been too stubborn to admit it. I cried because I was free. That evening, I took out my phone and called my wealth manager, a sharp woman named Rebecca Chen, who'd been nothing but professional and kind. Helen, she answered. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I have a question. Remember how we discussed potentially buying property as an investment? Of course. I'd like to move forward with that. But not an investment property. I'd like to buy myself a home, something with a view of the ocean, maybe a small house in West Vancouver, with a garden. I've always wanted a garden. There was a smile in Rebecca's voice. I'll send you some listings tomorrow morning. Thank you. I paused. And Rebecca? I'd also like to make a donation to the food bank where I volunteer. $100,000, anonymous. Consider it done. Over the next 3 months, I bought a beautiful 2-bedroom bungalow in Dunderave. It had hardwood floors that didn't creak, a kitchen with granite countertops, and a backyard where I planted roses and tomatoes. I bought myself a new winter coat. I got the dental work I'd been putting off for 5 years. I took a cruise to Alaska with Mrs. Chen, my former neighbor, who'd become a dear friend. I lived quietly, but I lived well. And I never told anyone about the money. Trevor called twice. The first time was 4 months after our confrontation. He left a voicemail saying he was sorry, that he'd been under stress, that he hoped we could reconcile. He didn't mention that he'd seen my new address on a piece of mail that had been forwarded. He didn't ask how I'd afforded to move. The second call came 6 months later. It was brief. He was getting married the following week. If I wanted to come, I could, but he'd need to know soon because seating arrangements were being finalized. I didn't call back. I heard through my sister Patricia that the wedding went ahead as planned. 300 guests at the Fairmont Whistler. Vanessa wore a dress that cost $12,000. They honeymooned in Bora Bora. 6 months after that, Patricia called with news. Trevor and Vanessa had bought a house in Kelowna. A big house. 4 bedrooms. They'd stretched themselves financially to afford it. He asked about you, Patricia said carefully. Wanted to know if you were doing okay, if you needed anything. What did you tell him? I told him you seemed very happy, that you'd moved to a lovely new place and were doing well. Thank you, Patricia. Helen, my sister said quietly, can I ask you something? How did you afford that house? Your pension couldn't possibly. I made some good investments, I said. It wasn't a lie. And I learned to value myself enough to spend money on my own happiness. A year passed. Then 2. I filled my days with volunteer work, book clubs, and long walks along the seawall. I made new friends. I took an art class and discovered I had a talent for watercolors. I learned to make sourdough bread. I adopted a cat from the shelter and named her Juniper. I was 71 years old, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't living for someone else's approval. One afternoon, I was in my garden pulling weeds when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Mum. Trevor's voice was different, quieter. It's me. I sat back on my heels, dirt under my fingernails. Hello, Trevor. I heard you have a new house. A nice one. I do. There was a long silence. How can you afford it? That's not really your concern. Did you win the lottery or something? He laughed, but it sounded forced. I smiled to myself, touching the locket under my blouse. Something like that. Another silence. Mum, Vanessa and I are having some financial trouble. The house we bought, the mortgage is more than we thought. We're drowning. I was wondering if you might be able to help us out. Just a loan. We'd pay you back. No. You didn't even let me explain how much. The amount doesn't matter. The answer is no. But you clearly have money now. You bought a house in West Van. Do you know what those cost? And you're living alone. You don't need all that space. You're right, I said calmly. I don't need it. I want it. There's a difference, and it's my money to do with as I please. I'm your son. His voice rose. Family helps family. You're absolutely right. Family does help family. Family calls to check in. Family visits without an agenda. Family doesn't plot to move their mother into subsidized housing so they can steal her savings. I pulled another weed from the rose bed. You stopped being that kind of family a long time ago, Trevor. I apologized for that. You apologized because you wanted something, not because you were sorry. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. So that's it? You're just going to cut me off? I'm not cutting you off. You're welcome to call me any time, to visit, to have a relationship with me. But you won't get money from me. Not now. Not ever. You're a selfish old woman, he spat. You know that? You're going to die alone. Maybe, I said, but I'll die free, and I'll die knowing I spent my last years living for myself, not being used by someone who only saw me as a source of funds. He hung up. I sat in my garden for a long time after that, watching Juniper chase a butterfly through the roses. The sun was warm on my face. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and cedar. In the distance, I could hear children laughing in a neighbor's yard. That night, I pulled out my journal, something Rebecca had suggested I keep to record my thoughts during this transition. I wrote about Trevor's call, about how I felt, and then I wrote this. I spent 40 years of my life putting everyone else first. I raised a son alone. I worked jobs I hated to pay bills. I sacrificed my dreams so others could have theirs, and I thought that's what love was. I thought being a good mother meant giving everything, even when there was nothing left. But I was wrong. Love isn't sacrifice when the other person only takes and never gives back. That's not love. That's being used. Real love is mutual. It's respect. It's showing up even when it's inconvenient. It's caring about someone not because of what they can give you, but because of who they are. I have $13 million now, give or take some after investments and purchases. To some people, that would mean I should share it with my family, that I should help Trevor buy his house, pay for his lifestyle, ensure his comfort. But money didn't create the rift between us. Money just revealed what was already there, a son who saw his mother as a resource, not a person. If he'd come to me 2 years ago, before the lottery, just to visit, just to talk, if he'd called on my birthday, if he'd asked how I was doing even once. But he didn't. And that tells me everything I need to know. I choose me. I choose my happiness. I choose my peace. And I will never apologize for that. I closed the journal and looked at the photograph on my mantle. It was from last month, taken at the top of Grouse Mountain with Mrs. Chen. We were both grinning, the city spread out below us like a carpet of lights. I looked happy, really, genuinely happy, because I was. 3 years have passed since that day Trevor and Vanessa came to my door. I'm 71 now, my garden is thriving. I've traveled to Scotland and Ireland. I've donated over $500,000 to charities I care about, all anonymously. I've helped Mrs. Chen's granddaughter pay for university. I've funded a program at the food bank that provides fresh vegetables to families in need. I still wear the locket every day, my secret reminder that I won more than money that day in the lottery office. I won my freedom. I won my self-respect. I won the right to live my life on my terms. Trevor sent me a Christmas card last year. It was generic, the kind you buy in a box of 24. He signed it Trevor and Vanessa and included no note. I put it on my fridge for a week, then recycled it. I don't hate him. I don't even wish him ill. I simply refuse to set myself on fire to keep him warm. Because here's what I've learned in these past 3 years, and what I wish I'd understood decades ago. You can love someone and still choose not to let them hurt you. You can be a mother and still have boundaries. You can have money and not be obligated to share it with people who only value you for what you can provide. Being a good person doesn't mean being a doormat. Being generous doesn't mean being a fool. And being family doesn't give someone the right to exploit you. I think about the woman I was 3 years ago, sitting in that apartment with the broken latch and the leaky tap, telling myself I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was lonely, and I was settling for crumbs of affection from a son who couldn't be bothered to call his own mother. Now I'm the woman in the garden with dirt under my nails and a cat at my feet, and friends who actually show up. I'm the woman who says no without guilt. I'm the woman who knows her worth isn't measured by how much she sacrifices. And if that makes me selfish in Trevor's eyes, so be it. I'd rather be selfish and happy than selfless and miserable. The doorbell rings. It's Saturday, which means Mrs. Chen is here for our weekly tea. We're going to plan our next trip. Maybe Portugal, maybe Japan. I open the door with a smile. Come in. I just made scones. She hugs me and hands me a bouquet of tulips from her garden. For you, my dear friend. Friend. Not because I'm useful, not because I have money, but because she genuinely enjoys my company. That's worth more than $13 million could ever buy. But having both doesn't hurt either.